Good evening, everybody. I know I have a broadcast title. Looks like the volume's a little bit higher than I wanted it to be. Just give me a second to sort that out. So my title promised something a little bit lighter and with less space. So why do we see Gods Will Be Watching? I really liked playing this game. The ending was really fun. So there's two things I wanted to do, which was number one, do the second ending where you choose to side with Xenolifer. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the ending, because I was thinking about it today. And there's some things to discuss which I didn't really get a chance to go into because I wanted to get some sleep. I know I talked about it a little bit when I played it. But we'll just sort of put a cap on this game and choose to... Sorry about that. So yeah, we'll put a cap on this game, and then we'll move into something a little bit lighter. So this does mean you're going to have to watch the fight again, but I'll make it as quick as I can. I'm just going to skip through all the dialogue on this, because you can refer to yesterday's broadcast if you'd like to see all the details. I will just let you guys know that chat is currently loading for me right now. I'm not quite sure what's going on with Twitch. But I'll let you know once it's oh, actually it's working again now. So I didn't see anything that was posted at the very beginning, sorry for that. But it looks like I'm able to talk to people now. Let's see if I remember all the moves. So it looks like it basically looks like the difference between the kick and the block is indistinguishable. Everything else has a pretty clear tell. And you can win this fight fairly simply once you know the patterns. But that's the big trick. For instance, this one is unblockable except for the jump back. And if you get an unlucky string of those, eventually you can't jump back. And the thing that finally broke it for me was the fact that you can actually get a punch in on that. It's not a trivial encounter by any means. I think I will say, like, as far as a game like Gods Will Be Watching, you know, most of them tend to have some puzzles or some tasks that are a little bit difficult to go through with. So this one is a pure fight. I actually like that they ended it this way. It's not necessarily the most thoughtful puzzle, but it's, I don't know, it's the kind of stuff I like to end a story like this with, a big, larger-than-life fight with the with your nemesis. Sorry this is taking so long, by the way. I don't want to spend too much time on the fight, but I did want to just again do the other ending from yesterday and talk a little bit about the ending. My best bet has always been to let 3 of those go by, and then do the punch. I'm also kind of curious, seeing as this is the same save from last time, whether or not Burden says that this is the first time I've beaten you. So I will read the dialogue for that. It's gotta be embarrassing when both go for a block. Just one more of those. Oh, nice. You really deserve the title of legend. How did you... You're a far better warrior than Nelium. I just won because I fought you a million times before. Yeah, so he does say this is the first time I ever beat you, except that that's not true. Alright, so we went for Overdust last time, but this time we'll do Xenolifer, which implies that I will not take the antidote to the planet, and it will fall to the Medusa virus. Yeah, there you go. So, goodbye, Liam. Take care of the world, I'm leaving. I meant it when I said I believed in you. I think he says the same thing in the Everdusk example as well. Okay, so it's basically the same ending both times. The only thing that really seems to be different is where the antidote goes. Which is fine, because this wasn't the only reason why I wanted to bring this up. So you'll remember from yesterday's broadcast, you find yourself in the desert again. And nothing happens until you click the mouse, and then you see the repeat again. And in that final fight, there's the talk about how you fought Liam a million times before and things like that. So, I don't have any other... I mean, I need to give credit to the source from where it is. I'm not going to be making a Nietzschean argument by any means, but this brings to mind a concept that sometimes comes up in reference to the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche called the eternal return. Now again, the big thing here, a lot of people say, well, that's just reincarnation or something like that, and if you want to talk about philosophers who believed in reincarnation, you can go all the way back to Pythagoras. So I'm not necessarily going to be talking too much about philosophy, but I think there's something that's quite relevant to this particular game, and it comes from his book, The Gay Science. The quote goes, I'm just taking off of Wikipedia, but I do have the book. I just didn't, there's no point in grabbing the book when I have a readily available online source I can read off my screen. The quote says, "What if some day or night a demon were to steal into you and your loneliest loneliness and say to you, 'This life as you now live it and have lived it, and let me try this again. What if some day or night a demon were to steal in after you into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, 'This life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. Would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? Or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, "You are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine?'" So there's a lot that gets said about this as far as philosophers and students of philosophy are concerned. I'm not really trained or equipped to talk about that idea, but I do think this particular idea of reliving an existence over and over again, and if you were to be faced with such a demon, would they have just told you that you were living a terrible curse, or would they have told you the greatest thing ever, is actually relevant to this game. When you consider, this is something we talked about yesterday, the decisions that you make in this game tend to be ones that you make because you're able to do it over and over again. And when you think about it, you've got these different, you've got these different scenarios. You've got ones where you can murder a child in order to accomplish your goal, however noble that goal may be. Obviously, you also make your decision in terms of what you do with Xenolifer. And so, in that case, it brings kind of an interesting context to this game. Is the repeated existence of Burden, is he somebody who's living that curse of the demon, or are you the type of person who has remained upright the entire time through, and even though it's only the gods that are watching, did you behave in a way that you would want to repeat over and over again? I mean, certainly the character of Burden is extremely tired by the end of it. He's worn out. He is tired of everybody putting their burdens on him. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was something that had come to mind when I watched the playthrough the first time. And oh, actually, incidentally, for their note on thank you for playing, I did make a note on Twitter, System Chalk, if you are not yet following. Although I will admit it tends to be a little bit more of a billboard for when I go streaming, and I only occasionally write something on there. It's just because, in case you haven't noticed, I'm a little too long-winded, and the format of Twitter doesn't always lend itself to my overly long diatribes. So here comes the return. The one thing that is kind of interesting about this return is I think when you wake up from the supposed ship crash, you are already wearing this outfit. You don't put it on. So I'm not entirely sure this is supposed to be the start of the journey where you find yourself in Chapter 5. Yeah, Chapter 6 is the hostage scenario. Chapter 5 is the desert wandering. So, in any case, I did make a quick note on the Twitter account just to say, you know, that I'd finished the game. I thought it was really wonderful. Like I said, I loved playing every minute of it. It's a brutal game, but it's something that I'm really happy I got a chance to play. And Deconstruct Team definitely made my day by giving a favorite to it. So I realize that is the sort of thing that you do if you want to have good marketing for a game. But I don't know, it's nice to have something like that. It's good to know that at least some element of the developer has seen that their work is recognized for the quality that it is. As far as recommendations, I did write one on the Steam service, like the reviews. You've seen it. You know, if this seems like the sort of things that is for you, I would recommend it. But the big thing is don't, you know, it's a very simple point and click adventure. It's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be Day of the Tentacle. It's hard, and I think if you were to play it on an easier mode, you would deny yourself the opportunity to have, you know, to get the experience, to really enjoy it. I think it's a really compelling story. I think it's really rewarding when you get stuff done right. There are achievements, so if you want to keep seeking for those sort of things, I suppose there is a bit of replayability to it, although I'm not entirely sure I'll be going out of my way to get the rest of the achievements. I got quite a few. I was surprised through the playthroughs. But on the point of the chronological order, I think the thing that's kind of interesting is I don't know if Burden ever has the same name in each of the chapters. You know, I know he's Abraham in Chapter 1, which is the hostage situation. I think he is Burden in Chapter 2, which is the torture scene. I believe he becomes Sergeant Burden for the third chapter, and it's possible that he may be. It's possible he may just be Sergeant Burden for Chapter 4 again, which is the one on the alien planet, or where you're stranded on the alien planet. And then by the way, it looks like I'm dropping a few frames here, so if there is a problem in terms of the overall quality of the broadcast, please just let me know and I'll do what I can to get that fixed. It may mean that I need to reset the broadcast, but I definitely want to make it as painless of a viewing experience as possible. Definitely doesn't have a name in the desert sequence. He's just Sergeant. And I actually didn't pay attention to who he was in Chapter 6 and Chapter 7, which is a shame because I was literally just in Chapter 7. It's kind of neat. His name is definitely not the same through each mission, and I don't quite know what that's supposed to mean. It definitely explains the weirdness. Like, I always just thought that there was sort of the story that Deconstruct team wanted to tell, and that each individual chapter would sort of reset independent of what had happened before. Like, it's not a Telltale game, so you're, you know, if Marvin dies in the previous episode, he's still going to be there wagging his tail, chasing the stick in the next mission. But of course, with this revelation that everything in this game has happened before, makes a lot more sense that there is the canonical version of what happened. And, you know, sometimes Burden doesn't necessarily even make it to the end of the story. He maybe doesn't make it past the hostage situation or something like that. So I thought that was a nice little touch. And then, what was the other? Oh yeah, so working out a chronological order, it would make sense that Chapter 5, the Wandering Desert, is sort of the starting one. It's obviously implied that the mission went wrong and that his ship crashed, except that when you go to Chapter 6, you successfully crash the ship crash your one-man ship into the Matriarch. So I would have to assume that the desert is the beginning, especially because that's where you get the name. Now, of course, the reason why you're able to join up with the Constellar Federation in the first place is actually because you're wearing the Everdusk suit. So this is the one thing, I mean, this is kind of the thing about any time travel story, if you want to call it a time travel story. You don't know the origin. Like, at some point he had to get that Everdusk suit at the very beginning. Unless, of course, he just pops out of nowhere with the Everdusk suit on. But basically, the fact that he's wearing his Everdusk suit is what brings him in league with the Constellar Federation. From there, I would assume that the flashback where he is checking in with the Constellar Federation would probably be the second part of the story. Certainly that happens before the torture scene, because that's, you know, the flashback that he's thinking of when the I can't remember the hostage. I can't remember the torturer's name offhand. But anyways, so that I'm assuming, you know, just checking. At some point, he hooks up with Everdusk and agrees to infiltrate Xenolifer. Actually, come to think of it, that may happen after... No, that can't happen after the hostage situation, because that would be... that's a good question, actually. So it seems like the hostage situation in Chapter 1 is about getting the Medusa virus, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're trying to get the information that they need to make the mutation that you need to stop in number 6. We'll assume that's what it is. Anyways, so they're taking the material on the Medusa virus. Then Burden is captured and tortured, rescued from Everdusk, and I'm assuming that the research mission, the one where you need to dig your way out, and the stranded on the planet missions are in the chronological order. I like in an order that makes sense. I think it's only Chapter 5 that sort of breaks that. But, I mean, who knows, right? And the other thing, too, is that when you're talking about these different strands and this kind of this constant return, it's entirely possible that, you know, the desert mission that you go on is actually a different... it's just like, you know, it's a different strand. It's something different from this desert sequence that we have right now. And then, of course, there's a question, you know, when Burden decides to jump out into space, does he know what he's doing? Like, does he know that that is what starts the cycle again? That one I can't answer, and I think it's deliberately left as an open question. But I also know, actually, I noticed there's it looks like a mask down here, so I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. But anyways. That's the game. And we already know, so Xenolifer, you created a free world for aliens. You know, the majority of people definitely do Everdusk. That's what I did. if you want to see that ending, which is effectively the same one, you can watch yesterday's broadcast. I promised something light and not in space, but I did want to just talk a little bit about the ending, just because I really needed to get to bed last night. So it was a shorter discussion than we wanted. So this morning I went through my Steam library and basically just tried to find stuff that interested me, or stuff that I hadn't played before. So I definitely have some heavier material that's coming up. You know, this War of Mine will be fun to play. I think I definitely want to play more of Transistor as well. Transistor was such an interesting story. We haven't gotten very far in it. Just a really beautiful art style, wonderful soundtrack. This War of Mine, I know I have a lot to talk about, especially because of some of the research on Civil War that I've had to do recently, and I'm trying to find the game that I was loading up. But yeah, some research in Civil War and the fact that War Photographer is one of my favorite documentaries. But I thought, you know, moving from Gods Will Be Watching, which the original description someone had given to me was it's just depressing and violent. I wanted to make sure I did something that was a little bit more upbeat. Trine would be kind of fun too, because I know I did that on the Extra Life stream. I know you can't see the video yet. That's coming up in just a minute. Yeah, basically I thought today would be nice to kind of get some... Today would be nice just to relax and play games that don't make you feel bad. I've not actually played Dustforce. I went through the tutorials, and that was it. So this is going to be a bit of a blind playthrough. Oh yeah, I should change it, because I'm definitely not playing Gods Will Be Watching anymore. So my goal here is to do... Oh! Why doesn't Twitch recognize it? There we go. That should be updated now. So one problem I was running into is Control actually switches me between windows in my current setup. But yeah, so this is more or less a blind playthrough. It seems a little bit like Super Meat Boy, which means I hope people don't come in expecting speedruns. Oh lord, I don't even know. Tutorial didn't cover... Yeah. But so far as I can tell, this game is all about sweeping things. Yep. Yeah, not really... I'm not doing this with any finesse, that's for sure. I gotta get used to the controls still. Yeah, so the idea here is that you need to clean up the leaves, but what happens with these objects that you can attack? Like, so the big thing about this game is you kind of want to do combos, which I've not been doing right now. Oh, and it looks like I missed an opportunity to get some more leaves. Yeah, so you can use the leaves to like cling off of the roof and stuff like that. So I am the almost 81,000th best player at this. Like I said, there's not any speedruns happening here. Yeah, basically this seemed to be just a fun little simple game to pass some time. And the other thing I was hoping to try and do on this broadcast is get a little bit better at consistently talking while the game is going on. Now the drawback, I suppose, is I don't have a ton to talk about that relates to this game, and school is not quite into full force yet, so I just know that I've got a whole lot of work that I need to do, which I've been neglecting due to streaming. I'll need to get a little bit better at that, but I am committed definitely to streaming every day. We're on the 7th, so that will mean that we're 1 week into streaming as many days in 2015 as possible. I noticed actually another thing that's relevant to some of the things that this channel covers, in this case particularly Dota 2, is Valve has already announced their plans for the International 5. It actually looks like the teams are going to be decided in May, which particularly interests me because that means, like, one of the big things about the Western Dota scene right now has been the sudden shakeup of a lot of teams. In particular, right now, there's been... we talked about this a little bit if you managed to catch the sample broadcast we did. I don't know how interested people are in terms of my thoughts on these things. I think the problem I had with... Wow. I think the problem I had with the last broadcast that I did as far as the... Oops. Now I know why people don't turn on double tap. So one of the problems I had with the last broadcast that I did with Nick the Peasant was I thought I was a little bit too passive in my coverage. I think the analysis part I feel very comfortable with. I'm still not quite at a point where I think I can hype a match particularly well. And maybe maybe I just don't need to. You know, that could be... It could be I should just stick to what I'm good at. But I think I sort of deferred to him a little bit too much. And not that I think he's a bad caster, it's just I don't necessarily want him to have to do all the work because I'm, I don't know, too shy. But other than that, I will say that I think as a whole I've become a little bit more confident in my Dota 2 casting, and it's something I'd like to do some more of. So if you're interested in Dota 2, I can try and come up with a regular day where maybe I try and do some solo casts and see... This is a tricky one. Oh, here we go. So, I have the right idea, just the wrong execution. Oh, drop. That's to be a way... There we go. That's an example of how you can run up on the ceiling. And ideally you can do a combo, something like this. Something like I was planning to have happen rather than what actually happened. Oh, I wanted to hit it up. Okay. There we go. Oh, come on. I almost died there. So yeah, if Dota 2 casting is something that you are interested in, I can definitely look into having just a regular, like a weekly stream where I do some practice solo casting, and we can... I can just do some better announcements for that. Normally, if I'm going to be Dota 2 casting, I'll just host Nick's site because he has a better internet package than I do. And so as a result, I can take advantage of the fact that he's streaming, do the cast with him, and... Oh yeah, I should maybe explain this. So, my internet package at present does not support me playing Dota or watching Dota and streaming it, which makes it a little bit hard to do follower and, well, I don't have subscribers, but follower games. It is something I'm trying to find a good way of doing. I think I've got a couple of ideas of things that seem to have worked in the past, which can at least give us something to do on the channel. But I will say just overall, I think I'm kind of disappointed with how my internet situations worked out, just because I really like to play some games with you guys, and I know it doesn't always plan out. So yeah, this will be the story of this game. Finesse, don't ever expect higher than a D. But anyway, so as far as Dota's casting is concerned, it's something I'll do somewhat regularly. I'm sort of working on timing things out with Nick as far as co-casts are concerned. And I will always be hosting a site when I'm casting with him, and then as far as solo stuff is concerned, I think the way I can do that is I won't be able to cast a live game, but I know Reddit has people who post games that they thought, you know, they liked or they thought were really good, and put in requests to cast it. Now, I'll be honest, I think a lot of the stuff that winds up on there is just sort of, you know, there were lots of kills, or I got a lot of kills in it, which maybe, you know, it's obviously really good for the player who did well in the game, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good, actually a good and exciting Dota game. But, you know, one of the big things that I think is underappreciated about casters is how they can turn a, you know, maybe I won't say a boring game, but maybe a game which isn't as eventful into something that's still entertaining to watch. So I think it would be good to, you know, try casting some games that don't seem like the kind of thing that would be fun for lack of a better term, I guess. Like okay, so here's the thing. Like, you could do a practice cast for, you know, Game 5 of the International 3 between Navi and Alliance, and, you know, if you can't make that exciting, you're just really unpracticed. And actually, I mean, that would be a fantastic exercise for me. Could I cast a game like that, which is clearly one of the, you know, I dare to say, one of the best Dota games played? It's certainly the thing that got me sort of really into the game. And I mean, that whole series I really like, but definitely Game 5 is sort of everything that you want in a good game of Dota. But yeah, so could I take a game like that and cast it somewhat convincingly? I mean, all the analysis has kind of been done, right? That game is probably more analyzed than any, you know, I really can't think of any other one. I know the finals were kind of considered a disappointment this year, so it's certainly not going to be Newbie versus Vici that people are analyzing for gameplay, especially now that that patch has been, you know, largely dealt with. Yeah, I don't know. But the big thing on this is I think it would be a good exercise to basically just take as many games as I could and do some solo casts and just see how I handle it, see how I do in that role. I just want to get the leaves, come on. Alright, probably D for finesse again. No, B, okay. So, probably not a very sophisticated scoring system for finesse. Yeah, I didn't really mean to talk so much about Dota 2 casting. Where I was going with this largely was the upcoming International, because, you know, the plans are already being made, and it makes sense, right? Like, the last International was so big that they need to, you know, they need to make sure that they keep the momentum, right? Like, can you imagine what would happen if you have, you know, the largest esports prize pool ever, and all of a sudden, you know, the follow-up is significantly lower? And I mean, Valve has the potential to, you know, to be in that situation. They haven't delivered all of the stretch goals for the compendium yet, and there's definitely, and I mean, on top of that, there's a lot of bad will as far as the way that they've implemented the new item system. I don't think anybody's been getting item drops, it feels like. Welcoming gifts are pretty much the only thing people can expect anymore. I don't get items for leveling up anymore. I'm really curious what the fastest on this level is. It seemed pretty simple. 19 seconds. Sorry, I just took a bite on something and I'm just gonna move away from the microphone slightly so you don't hear me masticating a bounty bar. Damn, that would have been a good run. I want to get all the leaves. Oh, come on. I'm a terrible aim in this game. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that they kept counting your time. Should be able to, yeah, get everything. Drat. So yeah, anyways, so on the point of Valve, they have kind of angered the player base as far as items are concerned, which, you know, fair enough. I mean, the big thing is that the Dota player base, and I include myself in this, is a really, really whiny bunch. So, no, I mean, Valve is a business, right? They're going to want to make as much money as they can, and I definitely think they were probably giving away too many items, and they're now seeking to correct that. But unfortunately, you know, the people who lose in that situation are the players, and so the players are obviously going to be a little mad about it. And it's sort of up to Valve to make sure that they, you know, I don't know, I guess they preserve whatever they're looking to get out of that player base, right? Another good example of this would sort of be how players react to the survey as far as... I'm just no good at that part. There we go. So, like, there's a survey at the end which is about whether or not you enjoyed the game or something like that. There's a lot of people who don't fill that out, and Wagamama is a pretty popular pretty popular streamer. I don't know if he's currently a professional player or is just wanting to do it, get back into it. I know he said his goal this year was to play on a professional team, and he was on Complexity for a while. But it seems like he's not with them anymore, and I don't know if that's a temporary situation or if he has reconsidered either his placement in that team or ultimately his decision to go back into professional Dota. But I asked him, I mean, the problem is people sort of reacted a certain way to a statement, which I was a little disappointed in. I think, like, he's a really solid guy. Well, I mean, I don't know him individually, but certainly everything I've seen on his stream is he's thoughtful, he's polite, and he wants to encourage a certain positive type of behavior and attitude in the game. And the point that he made was that, you know, Valve is ultimately asking for something without any, you know, any reward to the individual or even an explanation in terms of what it's for. As I say, why, you know, why would I fill out a survey like this? You know, I don't know what it's for, and I would rather not just, you know, voluntarily give over something like this. Which I think is completely fair. I mean, consider how you likely will react to a telemarketer. It's generally not positive. Now, I think, you know, probably the telemarketer is not necessarily that happy to be calling you either, so it's not that I certainly don't intend to be rude to anybody. But I'm also not going to give them a lot of time. You know, I have a certain value on my time, and I only have a certain amount of it. And so talking to somebody about an unsolicited product or service is not how I want to spend that time. I don't know why I'm not doing my dash. There we go. No way I'm going to be able to get that test. Oh, come on. Again, no finesse points here. This is a fun little game, though. I will get back to Dota. Again, as you noticed, I tend to lose my train of thought pretty easily. Well, better than a D for finesse, I guess. But yeah, so the big thing here is that Valve is a really interesting company, and I think they make a good product, and overall they sort of seem to have their head in the right place. I definitely like the fact that they're very open about being a very data-driven company. Now, this is obviously my inner economics geek speaking. Data is something wonderful, and I need to find some for my thesis. But, you know, the fact that, like, think of it this way. There's a lot of people I know who have gone into, like, business and commerce programs and things like that. Is there a reset option? Yeah. So I don't need to keep killing myself. So there's, you know, actually a really good example of this would be the type of person you imagine when you think of like a Wall Street trader, like one of these guys who, you know, trades with their gut. They just know the will of the market or something like that. Why can't I jump down? There we go. Okay, not exactly how I wanted that to go, but it works. Apparently I have to jump down on these things. Oh yeah. Okay, so I'm definitely seeing where you're supposed to do the combos on this. I'm just utterly failing to perform. Oh, here. Alright, well, it was a good try. I am terrible. Okay. Now the real question is, how do I get that last one? Oh, like this. Alright. So, I mean, the sort of guy, I guess the image I keep thinking of when it comes to something like a stock trader or something like that is the sort of guy who gets described in Michael Lewis's Liar's Poker. For better or worse. And I mean, there's something to be said for that, right? Like, there's this Steve Jobs, quoting Henry Ford, but the sentiment which says, if I regarding things like focus groups, Henry Ford saying, if I asked the consumer what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse that ate less. When in fact what they really wanted was something that was an entirely new mode of transportation. And this is why we really respect innovators like this. And of course, one of the funny things about Ford is that, his great innovation may not necessarily have been the automobile, right? It could just simply be the process through which he manufactured the automobiles, the assembly line. This is certainly what a lot of history classes will point to. Now, of course, it's not that he's the only person to do this. Adam Smith has a digression in The Wealth of Nations on the subdivision of tasks into making a pin. It's a really neat little short documentary by the National Film Board, which I believe you can actually get for free online. If you like short documentary stuff, and if you just want to entertain yourself, obviously in the world of torrents and Netflix, there's no shortage of things that you can watch online. But if you like this kind of stuff, and especially if you are in Canada, like myself, and you want to see some of our own cultural product, the National Film Board has a lot of films that are available for free online that you can watch. So an example would be Nails, and that actually shows you kind of this very, I'll say, the cottage industry approach. You see a blacksmith hammering out a nail and things like that, and then it's juxtaposed against images of a plant manufacturing nails. So, and it's not like this is the other nice thing about this short documentary is it's not like it doesn't beat you over the head with it, right? Like it's not pushing a particular agenda. It's not telling you how to feel about what's going on. A lot of people have a great love and respect for craftsmen and what they do, and I'm not completely indifferent to it either. I think there's something to be said for people who have a special skill that's unique, and sort of their ability to, I guess just, something like a butcher, right? It's not hard to get meat nowadays. But something about the craft of a butcher, somebody who knows all the parts of an animal, takes that time, puts in that effort to really make sure they've got a top-flight product. It's not something you see as much of nowadays. Now, I have cheaper meat, and I have, like getting groceries and things like that is a trivial endeavor now. I don't think I can do any more on that. But it's not necessarily going to come from an outright expert in their field anymore. The person tending it's not to say we don't have butchers, but, the mass production doesn't necessarily have this immediate claim to higher quality. Now, actually, it'd be really interesting. I am sort of making some assumptions here that maybe I shouldn't. One thing you can say about standardized practices are that they do ensure a certain level of quality control. Like, it's not just, I don't think it's an immediate given that the cottage system gives you an inherently better product. In fact, I think it's entirely possible you would find that automation gives you quality benefits as well as save some time. I don't know if I can do anything about it. Oh yeah, yes I can. Just need to believe in myself. But yeah, I don't necessarily think you should take it as a given that just because, it's made by Italian grannies in their kitchens or something like that, that it's an inherently better meal or something. I think you get what I'm saying. Oh, how do I handle this? Actually, so here's an example. McDonald's sort of seems to be the hallmark of like bad quality food. And yet when McDonald's was, like when Ray Kroc was making McDonald's basically, the whole point of that company was to ensure a certain level of quality. That you could get a, like, if you'd go to a diner before McDonald's, you would potentially have a patty with like a hole in it. I have literally no idea how to get back up there. I don't really want to reset though. Oh, there we go. And you know, his big innovation was creating a chain of stores, right? So it's not just that he has a diner which has a certain quality of patty or, you know, or any of the other things that go into the manufacture of a burger. You know, he's ensuring that over several locations in different states and in different countries, that you can come to rely on a certain type of quality from this particular brand. We sort of take that as a given now, but here's an example of how quality is ensured despite the controls for this game I'm still getting used to. Here's an example where you can't necessarily make the argument that the cottage, you know, the cottage system is producing anything, but I don't know if you can talk about maybe a cottage system diner, but I'm hoping the point is somewhat clear that you know, it's easy to talk about how that handcrafted item is assured to be better than the manufactured one, but that's not always true. I'm not advocating that you go to McDonald's. Enjoy whatever food you want. It's just, McDonald's is usually easy to talk about because people tend to immediately assume that it's a low quality of food, but there's definitely a time where you can talk about McDonald's as being an improvement over your alternatives. Of course, just because that was the case in the past doesn't necessarily mean that that's a reason to go there now. Once upon a time it was okay to own slaves, but I would not recommend that you go to a slave market, no matter how good the prices are. Alright, I've really gone off on a tangent here. So, the thing about Valve, so the whole point I was making on Valve and Data was that there is a really impressive ability that a lot of people who are good at business have, which is they're just sort of able to, like, know, oh, you know what, there's something I was going to do. I was going to remove double tap, oh, I don't want to reset. Going to remove double tap dash. So there's something about a certain type of business person that's really impressive in how they, like, they're able to just know what the business needs, what the customer wants, how to work out that particular relationship. You know, just, it's hard to really describe this stuff, and it's interesting how they seem to do it just purely on intuition almost. But intuition, like, I think the other thing about this type of person is it's not that they get everything right, it's that they're able to react when things don't go right. And that's sort of how you ensure the success of some kind of venture. You know, it's like, it's really cool to think that there's just these Ubermenschen that keep running around and, you know, and do everything right. You know, Elon Musk is a really smart guy, but I refuse to believe that he's never failed at anything in his life. I can't think of something he's failed at, but, you know, I'm sure that I mean, he's a really inventive guy, right? I'd be really worried if he had not failed, just simply because it suggests to me that he lacks imagination. I think if you're if you don't fail, you're effectively just setting yourself very low goals. And chances are the kinds of goals that will be done by automation. So the reason why I like Valve's data-driven approach and why they sort of commit to something like that is it's all well and good for me to say, you know, the customers are mad because, you know, we did X. And X increases our profits, so we need to make some kind of cost-benefit analysis between whether the profits, you know, what's the dollar value we can put on angry customers compared to the revenue that we're bringing in from this thing that the customers are mad about. A lot of businesses will do that. But what it fails to do, like what it effectively does is it takes a few things as givens. It makes a couple of assumptions that maybe aren't justified. For example, I think Gabe Newell did an interview on piracy, and they said rather than just sort of assume that people, well actually, you know, you could use iTunes as an example as well. It's definitely not easy to navigate these these levels. It's like there's any number of assumptions that you can make, and when he's talking about piracy, right, or, well, let's take the example of iTunes, because that's a fairly concrete one that I sort of know how it worked out. You know, you've got something like Napster coming out, and everybody's like, oh, you know, this is terrible, people are stealing music, people are just basically criminals, and they don't want to support artists anymore. So we need to come up with really strict laws to make sure that people don't steal CDs online anymore. Now you can continue thinking that way, right? There's going to be very few people who try to stop you, but I think your conclusion's going to be wrong because you are beginning with an incorrect assumption. I think, you know, whether or not you individually purchase CDs, I think it's, or maybe not CD, I mean, I don't know anybody who purchases CDs. You know, whether or not you buy anything on iTunes or not, or Amazon or any of the other services, it's kind of hard to argue that there are no people who are, you know, like it's hard to say that nobody wants to pay for music anymore. The success of iTunes and services like it is an example. But what you can definitely say is that the market for CDs is pretty small, and that's just because it's an outdated form of technology. It'd be like if we were watching VHS tapes still. Like, they take up a lot of space, and the quality isn't that good. You know, we don't even use Blu-rays or DVDs anymore, really. We just use things through some other digital format, and it's better because, you know, even Blu-rays take up space, right? It's in this case, you know, you can put it on your computer, like as long as you have some reliable service that you can get the content from, you're never going to lose your library. You're never going to have to worry about scratched discs or anything like that. And best of all, you don't take up a lot of space on your hard drive just because you can always download it again if you want to watch it again. And this is the other big thing too, right? Like, people don't necessarily want to buy films. Maybe they just want to rent them. Maybe they only want to watch it once. At which point it doesn't make any sense to own a physical disc, because it's going to be used once and then you'll get rid of it. So here it's just a matter of quality. So, you know, Gabe Newell has talked about the problem of piracy, and they approached it in a very similar way to Apple and iTunes. I was really tearing through that. I don't know what happened. Let's see if maybe it's a matter of... There we go. just gotta beat everything to cleanliness now. You can do multiple jumps in this game as long as you hit something. Alright, that was mildly impressive at the end, but purely by accident. So yeah, basically the Valve approach was to not assume that its customers were criminals. And if you think about it, like, factually it's kind of weird that somebody would spend so much money on a computer and that they'll incur a monthly cost of an internet connection. And yet, when it comes to an individual game, all of a sudden that's their breaking point. They don't want to spend any money on that. It's not very credible. So, instead of just running with your assumption, you try and get the data. And they found things like, they were talking about how Russia is the worst place for piracy. So, if you release into the Russian market, you're just guaranteeing yourself losses. Well, as partially as self-fulfilling prophecy, they found that the Russian pirates were doing better localization jobs and they were delivering a product, at the time that the North American release was happening, and so there was no reason for people to go through legitimate channels because legitimate channels were offering an inferior product. So, presumably, if you offer people a game in their, in their native language, and if you deliver it in a timely fashion, people will be willing to pay for that. And that's, again, that from the interview that I read, that seems to be the outcome. They're perfectly happy with the Russian market, despite everybody telling them that that's where the pirates live. Again, that's not to say piracy doesn't happen, right? But the big thing here is that if you just go with your gut, if you go with what's quote-unquote obvious, or anybody can see, all those lines everybody keeps saying to justify not thinking about a problem. I think chances are nobody's going to yell at you for being wrong, because everybody's wrong in that way. But you're not necessarily going to do anything interesting, or you're not going to innovate. And so this is the advantage of the data-driven approach, which is if you go to the data and it turns out that the assumption is correct, then it's not going to tell you anything different, right? You should just be fine. Basically the world should be reflecting this assumption that you've made. Maybe not the most interesting result, but certainly one where you say, okay, well, we spent a little bit of time investigating this problem, but we've, at least we can be certain of our conclusions. And in that case, it's lost time, which I realize in tech that's not a trivial problem, right? Time can mean everything when it comes to technology. But again, I'm just going to say that ultimately, spending a little bit of extra time to finding out that somebody who thinks with their gut could have found out is probably not going to be a life or death matter. Let's see if I can get this. No chance. I'm really curious what the condition is for ending, because I'm obviously not going to be able to get that creature. So am I just going to finish the rest of the level and find out I need to reset? Or have they assumed that this game will be played by morons like me? I also want to know if there's spikes down here. There are spikes down there. Don't quite know what I'm doing there, to be honest. I know I'm still not entirely comfortable with this game's controls, but I don't quite know how to... I guess the biggest thing that I'm running into right now is I'm not quite sure how the wall running and jumping tends to work. Like, obviously I can get a little bit of time I'm hanging in the air if I sweep it up, but it doesn't seem like I can jump off the same wall multiple times. Oh, didn't need to. Anyway, okay, so trying to sing Valve's praises and I just wind up rambling again. So the thing I like about the data-driven approach is that they don't take something for granted, they try and get some data on an issue and they will solve the problem that way, which I think is a really respectable way of doing things, and they deserve some kudos for that. But of course the flip side of that is you sometimes wind up with these situations. It definitely seems like it's a one-way street with Valve as far as their data-driven methods are concerned. Like, there's very little that gets shared with the community, I feel. You know, they did a post on ranked matchmaking. That was done, it has to be at least almost a year ago now, I would assume. And they said that they expect the values of the MMR to change, but we haven't actually heard anything about... We actually haven't heard anything about matchmaking and just kind of the... You know, just generally where people sit. Like, we don't know what the average MMR is anymore. People keep pointing to that post, but, like, that post would imply that the majority of players who are talking about their MMR are significantly ahead of the curve. We're talking in, like, the top 10 percentile. And that's just... I don't think that's credible. Reddit, you know... Reddit is full of idiots. It's not full of, you know, near pro players. And those are the people who are sharing, you know, MMRs which, under the original Valve post, would put them in, you know, among some of the best players in the world. And of course, they have their leaderboards, but this is the thing, right? You've got the top 100 players in that region. That's not going to be an accurate representation of, you know, where the player base is sitting. You've got, you know, you've got, I think, 10 million people playing Dota 2 monthly now. So, I think there's 4 different regions. 400 players, you know, a sample of the 400 top players is not going to tell you anything about the average ranking of a player. Now, Valve obviously has that data, but they're just not sharing it with the community. No, it's not necessarily their job to, right? But that's mostly what I'm talking about when I say that it's a one-side street. So the thing that started this whole thing, and the thing I wanted to talk about, was the International and where the teams are. Because they've said the invitations for the International will be going out in May. So that's basically, it's 4 months away? 5 months? Well, yeah, we're just kind of at the start of... we're at the start of the month, so we'll say five months. Especially... Now, we've just had Arteezy and Zai go to Team Secret, which is sort of... that they're kind of like the Western darling now. Although, I'll be honest with you, I think VP Polar is really interesting. Again, assuming that you like it. If you don't like Dota, this is going to be an excruciating few minutes. I actually should have gone on my break, but I'll finish this level then I'll take my first break. So Secret is... I mean, they've been pretty clear. This is a team that's designed to win TI5. They got the best players they could. They replaced someone who I think is an exceptionally good support for, you know, Arteezy and Zai, who are on Evil Geniuses, sort of the great North American hope. I haven't seen them play with their... I haven't seen them play with the new roster, but people are saying that that team's falling apart. I think that's being a little dramatic. I think it's fair to say that... I think it's fair to say that any team that's just recently changed its roster is probably going to need some time to get together, especially because EG's new roster contains a player who's literally never done a pro game in his life. And he's 15 for crying out loud. So, I mean, I think Zai is 16. So, you know, EG is definitely not afraid to get young talent and nurture it. But I think it's fair. Like, I didn't see Zai and Arteezy play when they first started on EG. And I suspect the reason for that is that nobody was quite paying attention to them the same way that they are now. So, I failed to make my point while I was playing this. I think what I'm going to do here is I'll hit continue. I'll leave you with I like the soundtrack, but I'm going to take my first break of the night. Just ask for about 3 minutes of your time. And we'll come back for some more Duskforce. This is a fun game. It's not, it's probably not the sort of thing that I'd put too much time in on my own, but I think this is a nice little relaxing distraction from some of the heavier stuff that we've been doing and we'll be doing next. See you guys in a little bit. Thanks for tuning in. very much for waiting. Now, I got some feedback. I actually got it a while ago, and I just wasn't checking my inbox that there is some static on the audio. If that has been the case, I'm really sorry it's been so long that this has been going on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to turn off the audio. And I'm just going to do a straight recording of my voice for a little while. And this is basically just going to be so I can turn on the stream. You are going to wind up hearing my voice sort of looped back, unfortunately. But this is basically just so I can get an indication of where the stream's sitting at. And make any corrections that I can on the audio on its own. Apparently, my experience of this has been that this has nothing to do with the microphone that I got, which I'm really happy with. But the audio capture software that I'm using leaves much to be desired. So I have a suspicion as to what the nature of the problem is, but I do need to listen to the sound to get an indication. I also notice there's a lot of drop frames tonight. Alright, having a little bit... I'm actually having quite a few problems on the stream tonight, it looks like. Anyway, at some point I should be hearing my voice. It's definitely I will say this one experience from streaming is it's definitely something you need to get used to, the sound of your own voice. Maybe you have a nicer voice than me. That's another possibility, but definitely one of the bigger things that I needed to get over when starting to stream regularly. Because I mean, I do want to take a look at the quality of it and see different ways I can improve. There's a lot of different ways that I can improve this. The technical problems being very low on that list, incidentally. I mean, technical problems are going to be what they are. Oh wow, that's really bad. Okay. I'm going to try two different things here. I may need to reset the stream if it's this bad. Sorry for the extended silence, I just need to reset a couple things, and I'm going to reset my stream just to see what's going on as far as the audio quality is concerned. Again, I really apologize for the delay on this, just I heard that scratchy sound and I'd rather not have you guys sit through that. I will at least put the music back up in a second if it becomes extended. I do need to actually hear what the audio sounds like right now. Yeah, so currently, I guess maybe I should say, so the microphone that I just got was an Audio-Technica AT2020, which I really like. The streaming program I'm using is OBS, which has served me well, but it is in a very early beta for Mac. And one of the drawbacks for it is that it doesn't actually have a regular desktop capture. Oh, that sounds better. Okay, great. So I can finally give you the music. And I'm sorry, I have no idea how long that scratchy audio was going on for, but looks like we got it fixed. And looks like there's a few more people in here, so welcome to the stream. I, right now, can't read chat, so I'll let you know when that's coming back up. I'm sorry if you've said something and I haven't replied. I am just dealing with the limitations of streaming. So, dealing with OBS, because it doesn't have this desktop audio recording, I used originally a program called WaveTap, which I found during the Extra Life stream effectively stopped working for the better part of the stream. Well, the last part of the stream, maybe not the better part. So I switched to a program called Soundflower Bed, which seemed to do the trick, but I've noticed two things on the archives, which is, number one, there seems to be a lag, and it's probably later on in I noticed it's usually later on in the stream, but basically there's a lag between what happens on the screen and the actual sound effect for it. I'm assuming that's just because the buffer is maybe getting a little overloaded, or it's, I don't know, so for whatever reason there's sync problems. And then on top of that, it seems to be the source of problems like the one that I just had, which was the scratchy sound. And just in general, it's like sometimes the audio will arbitrarily cut out. So I'm looking for alternatives, but because there aren't a lot of people who game on Mac, let alone stream on Mac, it's a pretty niche market as far as dealing with problems. Chat still hasn't loaded yet, by the way, so if you're recommending anything, I'll let you know as soon as I can read chat again. So Twitch is giving me an angry message saying that it can't connect. I don't want to take any more time off of the stream to deal with these kinds of issues, but if it extends for, let's say, a full minute, I'll take a second and I'll open a proper IRC client, or a proper IRC client, because I definitely like talking to you guys. Yeah, so that's kind of where the stream's sitting right now. There's obviously there's the problems that I have as far as bandwidth is concerned. That's going to be a feature. I'm terrible at cleaning up garbage. I fail as far as a janitor is concerned. So for the bandwidth issue is basically, unless I want to spend on the $100 a month internet package, which is a little bit past affordability at this point. I know I just got a nice microphone and all that, but spending $100 a month to stream is not affordable when I'm currently a student. Once I have, a slightly more regular means of income that isn't TAing income, I definitely consider something like that. But I can game on this package. My downloads I don't mind wasting, or not wasting, but I don't mind waiting for that kind of thing. And so at this point, the problem is that the upload speed would be ideal for streaming, and the current internet package that I have has a very limited upload limit. So I am terrible at this game now. Basically, I'm sort of constrained by that as far as the technical limitations are concerned. Nope. Okay, this is getting a little ridiculous. I'm just gonna do a quick restart on my web browser. I'm also dropping frames all over the place here, so I'm a little worried that the stream is not looking like it's supposed to. But yeah, so the bandwidth is something that I can't necessarily solve. I really would like to believe that there are solutions to the audio problems, though, and it's just a matter of finding the right program to record desktop audio. I keep doing strong attacks, but I think given the fact that I can't hit the broadside of a barn, it might be wiser to just do a succession of small, light ones. Okay, I know I just had a break. What I'm going to be doing here, because the chat is not being responsive, and because if I'm looking at my stats right now, I've dropped about 20% of the frames, I'm going to take the stream offline for a very brief moment. It shouldn't be more than 2 minutes. I'm just going to reset my router, reset the internet connection, and we'll see if that maybe does a little something for the quality of the stream. So I apologize to have a break just so shortly after I had my last one, but I want to at least make an effort to make this, and that way I can at least talk about something other than my technical issues all night. So I'll ask you to indulge me for no more than 2 minutes, and we'll be back to do a little bit more Dustforce.